Okay, I'll call the Thursday, April 5th, 2018 Board of Selectmen's regular meeting to order at 7 p.m. Could we have the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Also, on a sad note, if we can have a moment of silence for the Trooper First Class Kevin Miller, who was lost in a line of duty while he was working, and offer our thoughts and prayers for him and his family at this difficult time. Thank you. Okay, first up, Northwest Regional Workforce Investment Board. They were both supposed to be here last meeting. They couldn't make it. Your name, sir?
Michael Hayden.
Michael, could you come up and address the board about this
Sure.
and what it's about?
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for having me this evening. I apologize canceling last time we were here. But again, thank you for having me. I see that there's quite the lengthy agenda and the packed house tonight, so I'll be as brief as I can. As you see before you there on the screen, I represent, along with 13 other staff, the Northwest Regional Workforce Investment Board. The names there, Mr. Joseph Rinn, Giuseppe Pisani, Joe Vrabely, and George LaCapra make up our executive chairs. Sure. Thank you. Next slide, please. Just a map there that represents the Northwest region. Connecticut is made up of 5 workforce investment boards. We represent the Northwest. And as you can see, Waterbury, Danbury, and Torrington are our labor markets in that region. Our mission at the Workforce Investment Board is to promote economic development in the region by providing quality employment services to employers, job seekers, and youth. The governance structure. That's just the structure that we abide by, starting with the governor, the consortium of chief elected officials, which is everyone in the 41 towns and cities, the Northwest Regional Workforce Investment Board, which is us, and the American Job Centers. In our region, there's one comprehensive American Job Center, which is in Waterbury, and 2 affiliates in Danbury and in Torrington. Chief elected official agreement. Again, the Northwest corner represents 41 municipalities. The executive committee to have 5 members, 2 permanent, 3 rotating 2-year terms. The chair will rotate between the 2 permanent members, Waterbury and Danbury, who Mayor O'Leary of Waterbury is currently the chair. Liability insurance in place for disallowed costs, shared based on relative use and proportionate benefit. Again, our main office is in the Waterbury American Job Center, located on 249 Thomason Avenue, which is the comprehensive one-stop. The City of Waterbury is the grant recipient, along with the board being the subrecipient. An oversight of the chief elected officials, the executive committee of the consortium of chief elected officials, they meet to approve the budget and priorities for the year in every June. We also have the executive committee of the board that meets monthly to conduct ongoing business and act on subcommittees' recommendations as empowered by the annual grant of authority. Our full board of directors meets quarterly to set policy, receive programmatic and fiscal updates, and our subcommittees meet on an as-needed basis, along with our youth committee meets quarterly. Our strategic plan at the Workforce Board is to continue in pursuit and secure additional financial resources for the region's workforce development efforts. We work every day on increasing communications to our elected officials, hence us coming out here and on a tour of the whole Northwest corner, along with educators and the general public about lifelong learning, career development, and general workforce issues and trends. We also are to ensure Northwest Connecticut students and young adults are exposed to relevant and demand-driven career development opportunities. Our 5 main industry sectors for the Northwest region are manufacturing, healthcare, information technology, human services, and construction. We also engage employers in the development of the Northwest Connecticut Talent Pipeline, and we also target the training programs for low-skilled individuals seeking entry employment, other older individuals that need to redirect their skills, and facilitate collaboration with and among the economic development agencies in our region. So that's just a little overview of what we do at the Workforce Board. Again, we're responsible for 41 towns and municipalities throughout the Northwest region. The main reason why we wanted to come out here this evening is kind of just give you a little background on us. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with us or what we do, but the intergovernmental agreement is what it needs to be re-executed. It was first done back in 2003 under the Workforce Investment Act, and I believe then First Selectman Mark Cooper was the one that had signed off on it. With that being said, things have changed since then. We know First Selectmen have changed, mayors and so forth in our Northwest region. And in 2015, the Workforce Investment Act became the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And then a whole bunch of other things came along with that. So we had to rewrite our local plan for 2016 to 2020. We had to certify one-stop centers in Waterbury, Danbury, and Torrington, and along with re-executing this intergovernmental agreement. With that being said, I would, take any questions that you may have of us, and we'll go from there.
I understand that this is also part of our unemployment. Can you explain that?
Yes, sir. Well, unemployment. So the agreement is based on it being signed off by all the 41 towns and municipalities. If someone's unemployed and they're laid off or lose their job, nothing would change with getting their compensation from Department of Labor. But if this document wasn't executed, say for Southbury, then those residents wouldn't be able to get the services that we provide, whether it's job interviewing, skills, resume critique writing, the multitude of training programs that we offer, math classes, digital literacy, computer classes. I mean, we have a wide range of services that we provide there. And if you just give me one moment, in the past 2 years, we had 399 folks that came into our centers from Southbury, which is a pretty good number because, they know that we're there, they know that we exist, and, my boss and I, Kathy Awad, who's our executive director, we've been speaking about going around the Northwest corner, and we said we'd like to come out to you guys, whether it's quarterly or just kind of give you a little update what's going on. We might start a newsletter just to know, hey, this is what we have, this is what we have to offer, and that your residents are, please come on down and see us if needed. If you're not coming down, you're working, and that's great. But if you come up on hard times, we're there to help in any way that we can.
And where does this grant come from?
This is through federal dollars from the United States Department of Labor, along with state of Connecticut dollars as well.
So there's no additional cost to the town of Southbury to belong to this?
Zero cost. Okay. Yeah, everything's free.
Open up for any questions from the board.
Just curious how the employment situation is in Connecticut compared to other states. Do you have a sense of how we stand these days?
I know, in the Northwest region, we have in Waterbury, where we're located, we have one of the highest unemployment rates, along with Torrington and a few other areas that we represent. Then we also have Danbury, who's in our region, and they have the lowest unemployment rate. So I can't really speak on behalf of the rest of the country, but it looks like we're trending upward. We have a lot of folks that come to our center. There's new jobs being created every day. Manufacturing is a huge piece of what we do here, not just in the Northwest corner, but all over Connecticut. But like I said, we're there to offer whatever additional training folks are seeking if they want to get retrained. We're there for ex-offenders that are coming out that are entering back into our communities. We're there for the veterans, for the folks with disabilities. You name it, we're there providing whatever service we can.
I coincidentally recently just met with a gentleman who works with one of your counterparts in, I think it's called The Workplace.
Yes.
And that does Bridgeport and sort of that area.
Yes.
Of the state, and I think that there's real value potential potentially to residents who might have a need for the service, and it's at no cost to the town. But it could really be a boon for even if it helped one resident.
Well, it's available to us, so is there any other questions?
So we currently have an agreement in place. We're just looking for an update to that.
Yes, sir. Yes, it was back in 2003, but with the new legislation of WIOA that came in 2015, we just have to go out and re-execute it and update all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add that there's a website, cthires.com, which is through the Department of Labor. It's for job seekers and for employers to go on there, put their resumes. A lot of employers have found folks on there that posted their resumes, and 8 of your businesses have signed up on CT Hires, such as Smith & Nephew, K&W Construction, Chainsaws Unlimited, and A.E. Olson, they've utilized the website and have found success.
Very good. Any other questions? I'll thank you. We'll be taking a vote a little later, but I appreciate your time. And I thought it was important for the board just be explained. I mean, if we signed up that long ago, what it's really about and how it works. So
Absolutely.
This is actually good news. And the nice thing is that it evidently doesn't cost us directly in town to be along to it. So.
No, it's just like I said, if any of the residents come up on hard times, we're there for them and try to get them back into employment as soon as we can.
And having that number of who's been there is important to us. So
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Tamith, Director of Senior Services, for her presentation.
Good morning, Selectmen, or good evening, Selectmen. It's been a long day. I first wanted to share the really good news that after having a vision since actually starting in this position about creation of a Southbury senior network, and unfortunately just having too full of a plate, both myself and Jade Stoltz, the director of the Jewish Federation, with whom I've partnered with, and we've had a great start, and we continue strong. One of the things we are working on is collaborating for a joint health fair this year, and that's underway. But I had presented this idea to her of doing a senior network, and we've floated it out. Heritage Village was extremely receptive, as are, I've approached Lutheran Home, quite a few, Watermark, there've been many people, Sacred Heart Church. Basically, the vision of this is we have an awful lot of organizations, civic organizations, religious organizations, businesses that are all serving the same population, and none of us are talking to one another, none of us are working together. And I will say, too, that with this incredible cuts that came down from Hartford this past fall and the devastating effect on our seniors, there's no collaborative advocacy that's going on. And given the fact that we're 36% of our population is seniors, I think that we're missing a critical piece, and there's probably duplication of efforts that could be combined, power in numbers. So the biggest part of this process is casting the net and being able to pull everybody together and to get this underway. We agree that the volunteer leadership of that group will basically carry it forward. So this grant was recommended, the potential of this grant was recommended by the Connecticut Community Foundation. And so I did write that. I believe I shared that with you in several director reports that I was pursuing it, and we received the award letter. We're currently actually, the prior intern that had been with us at the center has shown some interest. He's a Southbury resident himself, which I think is really critical for somebody who's knowledgeable about our community already. So we haven't received the check yet, so nothing's underway. We're still talking about it. But I wanted to share that with you. Very, very excited. Jade and I are thrilled to have this opportunity to really work even more efficiently for our seniors. So that's the first part. The second part for coming before you is our volunteer structure has been successfully drafted and created. For by way of background, utilized a lot of guidance from Massachusetts. I believe I've shared with you the incredible efforts and workings in Massachusetts with their Council on Aging. I really think our state could take a page from their book, and any opportunity I can to refer to some of the good works that they've done. And in essence, a 125-page manual of their successes and templates and that sort of thing. So this was not recreating the wheel. Utilized a lot of the things that they've used, as well as drawn upon what we already have in place. We say it all the time, Southbury runs on its volunteers, and our center certainly had that foundation existing when I came on board. The problem is that now with over 1,000 members, and unfortunately in the world we live in, we have to have some idea of, who we're working with, who's coming in and out of our doors. And then more importantly, just in the last month, we've had the ambulance at the senior center 3 times. One of those incidences, the senior stopped breathing in my arms. So you need to have information about the people that you're dealing with. She's fine, by the way, thank God. But, we need to have information of the people that we have interacting. And the other thing is these seniors want to be a part of their center. They want to be able to contribute. And there's certainly plenty of ways that we can draw upon that. So that being said, worked very closely with Corporal Grillo from our police department, who basically recommended the background check that we should be using. As anyone who volunteers in the community is aware, whether you're a Boy Scout, Girl Scout leader, volunteering at your child's school, town employee bus driver, everyone is having background checks of some level done. So I spoke with Jeff, reached out to Corporal Grillo, and what I'm utilizing and what he has asked for us to utilize is the court judicial website, which is available to anybody to be able to run a check on anyone. So we're not looking to do credit reports and things like that. We just want to make sure that there's nothing, ridiculously obvious that is going on that we should be concerned about. And we're also running the name through the sexual registry, sexual offender registry. So that's that piece of it. We are doing little applications and little mini interviews, because you don't want to put a truck driving, swearing curmudgeon at our welcome desk. He might be better off to do an organizational thing or the garden. I use that as an example, but you want to make sure that it's a good fit. You want to make sure that it's going to be a pleasant experience for the volunteer, as well as it being something that's beneficial for us. Lot of questions, so you notice that my steps to becoming a volunteer manual is a little bit more substantive than the actual volunteer manual, because we'd like to see this program continue to grow organically based on our volunteers and what they'd like to see happen. We've taken extreme consideration and a delicate approach with the amazing foundation of approximately 45 volunteers that we already have. Panera is extremely generous to our center. They last year donated over $26,000 worth of retail food to us in value. And so we have volunteers that pick up, distribute. We also have our newsletter volunteers, and we have our cafe volunteers. They really fall under the New Opportunities umbrella, because we have a cafe manager from New Opportunities that runs that program. Nonetheless, they are volunteers interacting with our seniors. So I've been talking about this a lot with the commission. Unfortunately, weather has wreaked havoc with our meetings. So this this whole package went to the commissioners last week. I received one simple question back about the volunteer leader role. They knew I was presenting to you tonight. I felt it was very important that the commission see it before all of you, and that they were comfortable with it. Was with the chair of the senior commission this morning, and she had seen it and endorsed it. It's a living, breathing document. We will certainly expect that our volunteers will follow the code of conduct that's within our membership manual. I think that, I don't know if you have any questions. You have the document to see and to review. I don't know if any of you had any questions about it. You'll notice that it's small. The number of things that we're doing are small because we really want to kind of crawl before we walk and then walk before we run. So we folded in the existing volunteer opportunities, and then we have created that welcome desk. Many centers have that. Of course, I've been in front of you through the budget season and the finance board talking about the amount of counter time now because of the volume that we have coming into that building and the amount of time that takes away from my admin on the team. So having that welcome desk can really help with a lot of the simpler questions. And then also, too, to let you know, this has not been created in a vacuum. We have two incredibly existingly active volunteers, the Ruxtons, who have been very involved with the drafting of this document. I actually sat with Joanne this morning and we went over it one final time. So we have senior involvement, and Joanne and John agreed to be the initial volunteer coordinators in this structure. I had to, certainly make sure I had some volunteer buy-in to be able to launch it. Hoping they will remain past the 6 to 8 months they committed to, and I think they will, and we're hoping to bring on more coordinators. And we already have existing leaders, really, but we've started the letters and the outreach. We had about 37 people already asked to be new volunteers on top of the already 40 volunteers. So I'm really excited about this. I think this is something that the seniors are definitely very excited. I've had a lot of questions. I will be doing a tea with Tamith. I do them every month. Last month's was geared to really specifically questions about this, and unfortunately I only had 4 people show up. It was a great discussion, a lot of questions, a lot of excitement. I'm hoping it might have a greater turnout later this month, and we'll actually be making public the steps to becoming a volunteer so that they can actually take that home and kind of digest it for the people that haven't stepped forward to say they want to volunteer, or maybe they have and they have more questions.
Okay. Any questions of Tamith from the board?
Have you run this through the commission?
Yes, as I said, I sent them an email with all of the documents last week because we were canceled yet again because of snow. Told them that I was meeting with all of you this evening, that I wanted them to have, the first review and the opportunity to ask any questions or exhibit any concerns. And I had one simple question about the group leaders. Would we have leaders within specific groups? And I confirmed that we would. That was what the group leaders were about. They didn't specifically say group leaders, so that's when I, explained it would be the group leaders that would lead each respective group.
So there hasn't been a meeting of the commission since it sent the...
No, there hasn't, but I did ask that if they had any questions or concerns to share them with me before this evening, so they were aware that I was coming before you.
When's the next commission meeting?
The next commission meeting will be the third Wednesday. I'm sorry, I don't have the
Okay.
exact
Spring
date.
break
But
18th?
yeah, I think it sounds about right.
Is this is this sort of committing to paper processes already in place, or is this something new and adding new requirements?
No,
to the
this
program?
is just an offshoot of the membership manual. When it has the code of conduct, and all we are doing is we're actually putting a definition to volunteer positions that are already well underway and have been since well before I came on board. The food services one would encompass the cafe. It would encompass the Panera. The newsletter, been in existence for years. So it puts a definition to that role. The new job descriptions that exist are the garden, because thankfully we'll finally be able to launch the raised bed garden that was installed by the Eagle Scout last year, but it was too late in the season to grow, and the welcome desk. But that's been something that's been discussed for quite some time. I mean, that's new. So yeah, I guess in answer to your question, not new requirements, but it's something new, and we're hoping that not only will it, I'm not going to lie, help us with the workload that we're dealing with, but I also think it's going to help to create a little bit of a more welcoming environment. If you have somebody greeting you right when you come in as a newcomer, or a new member, or a member having issues with something simple like checking in, and there you have a peer helping you, it just probably fosters a lot more.
In developing it, did you talk to any of the other departments in town that utilize volunteers? And look at their requirements and incorporate any of that?
The only thing I did do was speak with Dustin, who vets volunteers and counselors through his department. So I did speak to him. He's actually using a paid program, a program he's paying for on a per background check. So it was more specific to the background check. To be honest with you, Drew, on what's already well established at the center, that's working at the center, and then of course a mom and a community volunteer for the years that I've been a volunteer. You know, I knew that we would need to do a background check. Unfortunately, not something that it's comfortable for me to come before you and talk about in a public meeting, but you know, there are things that have happened down in our center that it stresses the need to be able to do a background check. I mean, we have 2 vendors that are in our community every day doing business with our seniors that are not welcome in our parking lot, and they're certainly not welcome in my center because they've expressed and displayed very gross predatory behavior. So, you know, so for me, I just want to make sure we know who's coming in, we know who the members are, right? And we've got their information and stuff. We should with the volunteers. And I will say, just to clarify too, initially, and I've had 3 or 4 non-members and 2 non-seniors step forward and want to volunteer, and I've told them we're not there yet. I'd like to draw from our seniors first and create, you know, a good solid foundation. So that was my approach. I mean, I'm welcome suggestions or, you know, any concerns or, you know, and address them. But
Thanks.
yeah, it made my job easy. There's really incredible volunteers down there already.
Anybody else have any questions? No. Okay.
All right. Thank you so
Ken.
much. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
All right. Next up is Arthur O'Neill on the agenda on update from the state.
Good evening. Let me start with the budget. There is no budget in place at the moment. If you read the papers, there won't be anything voted on by the Appropriations Committee, it looks like, until April 20th. Today was supposed to be the day that we were supposed to JF, that is, have a joint favorable report on all of our bills, and so the Appropriations Committee is done for the year on its sort of original jurisdiction, producing a budget. And no document was ready, and no document was produced, and no document was voted on. So it looks like April 20th is the new date that they're aiming for to try to get things together by. The advantage, I guess, is that by that time we should have a much better idea of what the tax receipts are in terms of the April 15th filings, when people file their tax returns, and people asking for extensions are required to file with the extension an estimate of what they think their ultimate tax bill is going to be. So that usually tells us, and by April 20th we've gotten most of the money in that would be associated with the April 15th filing, although this year I think it's April 17th because of the way the calendar works. But we still would have a pretty good idea. By the 20th we'll have should have a pretty good idea. So that's all being delayed, and therefore we don't know what adjustments are going to be made to the fiscal year that begins on July 1. So because we don't know, unfortunately, you folks won't know either, at least until April 20th, or maybe probably more like April 30th. The legislature has until May 9th. That's the end of our session, and I would not be shocked if May 7th, 8th, 9th is when you actually see a budget voted on. It might happen a little sooner. I hope it does, because it's much harder for us to pass our legislation, and certainly it's harder for you to craft your budgets if you don't know how much money is going to be coming from Hartford. But unfortunately, that's the status of the situation. It's obviously, to some extent, a continuation of the ongoing problems. We currently are estimated to have a budget deficit of somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 million. It might be higher than that in the current fiscal year, which would require further reductions in spending in the current fiscal year. Again, that has not been addressed either. So that issue of deficit mitigation was not taken up by the Appropriations Committee as of today. That was specifically not done. And so that also has to be addressed. So I wish I could tell you that I have information, but I think the advice that I've given you in the past about the budgets has been to assume the worst in terms of financing coming from the state. And then if you get a little more money, that's better. It's better to have more money than you need than need more money than you have, I guess. So that's the status of the budget situation. Tolls, I mentioned that before, are still in play. But again, since we don't really know what we're doing about so many things with respect to the monies of the state of Connecticut, that's still also very much up in the air. It's not definitively a done deal, but it's definitely not out of the question that there would be legislation this year on tolls as well. So a lot is still in play. I noticed that you have on your agenda something that we talked about extensively in the Judiciary Committee this week, a couple of bills, 5540 and 5542. One of them is the so-called bump stocks bill, and the other one is ghost guns. I can tell you that the bump stocks bill got out of the committee. It was pretty much of a consensus bill by the end. I voted for that myself. And the bump stocks was something that was substantially changed from the original piece of legislation that was proposed. Some of you may remember we had a town hall meeting here just before the legislative session started. Senator Berthel, myself, and Representative Labriola. At that point in time, I don't believe there was a drafted bill available to look at, but when the draft did come out, there were a number of issues that needed to be resolved and worked on. The ghost guns piece of legislation also was passed out, although that was much more divided. It passed, but there were a lot of no votes, and I was one of those no votes. I think the bill needs a fair amount of work, although I think I see the outlines of a consensus that may develop. I had some legislation that, an amendment that I was working on, but we had gotten to the point where I think people were tired that particular night and did not want to have another hour-long discussion about a different approach to dealing with the ghost guns issues. So I don't know if you have any questions about either the budget or anything else. I will say that I think that both of those issues are going to be taken up by the full legislature. Both houses probably will take up, certainly bump stocks and quite possibly ghost guns. But I think ghost guns is going to change before it gets voted on finally.
Okay.
I've got a question for you on just the long-term budget outlook for the state. Is anyone at the state level, I guess the comptroller would be one to think about, looking at a projection of where we're going to be financially in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Is there anything like that? I mean, are we just going to keep seeing this every year where things just keep spiraling down? I mean, is that what we're looking at?
Well, the projections are, and there are a couple of different entities. The Comptroller's Office does have some projections. The Office of Fiscal Analysis, which works for the legislature, makes projections. The Governor's Office and the Office of Policy and Management, when they produce their budget, make projections going out into the future as far at least 3 years, and I think we actually have 5-year projections. And all of those projections predict that we are going to have substantial deficits, multi-billion-dollar deficits going forward, that the cost of the state pensions and health care obligations to state employees basically are driving these deficits. That cost is something that is contributing in a very major way to these multi-billion, $2, $3, $4 billion deficits that we're looking at for each of the fiscal years going out for at least 4 or 5 years. In addition, I should mention that we've just done a, bailout would probably be the best word for Hartford, where the state has obligated itself to, and there's some dispute about this, and I have some questions about whether this was done correctly, but at least the story that's coming from the administration and from the city of Hartford is that the state is on the hook for $550 million of Hartford's bonded debt to pay that, to help them refinance. So, with obligations like that being undertaken, it's very difficult. That's $35 million a year going forward, on top of all the other monies that we were obligated to spend on various things that the state had previously, before that moment, had obligated itself to spend. There is a report that was issued by the Fiscal Stability and Competitiveness Group that was put together. It's available. They have a website. It's about 100 pages long that suggests some things that we can do to try to change this direction. This was voted out, so to speak, a vehicle for a potential vote on this out of the Appropriations Committee today. It's got a lot of things in there, some of which are very controversial. Calls for basically reopening the CBAC agreement and trying to deal with the pensions and health care benefits, which, as I say, that's the thing, the elephant in the room that keeps causing these budget deficits to keep growing year by year. Also talks about changing our tax structure substantially, because their real plan is to not raise taxes to cover these deficits. Their plan is to realign our taxing structure and our incentives to businesses to encourage economic development and growth. That in effect we grow our way to financial stability going forward. But the first steps in that would be to convince people that we are getting a handle on our financial problems, which includes the pensions and health care benefits for state employees and also the pensions for school teachers, which are again, a very big item that is growing very rapidly and is going to contribute in a major way to future deficits as well that we're projecting. So unless we do some fairly serious things to change direction, yes, these numbers look like they are going to continue. We would have to have growth at a much higher rate than anything we've experienced recently, and the economy has been shrinking in the last 7, 8, 9 years. We have never really gotten out of the recession of 2008. Connecticut has never really gotten out. The jobs have finally been recovered, but there's a difference. The jobs that have been created over the last 8, 9 years have been jobs working, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but perhaps working at an Amazon fulfillment center. The jobs we lost were people who were working at a place like UBS making $500,000 a year. That's one of the big reasons why our tax receipts are off the way they are. And then we have all of the deferred costs that are associated with our transportation system, and that's why people are constantly talking about tolls or some revenue source to try to pay for upgrades to the transportation system, which feeds back into the economic development issue, because that's one of the impediments to economic development. It's very hard to get from point A to point B in the state of Connecticut. Try to get from Southbury to Hartford, count on at least 2 major traffic jams, one in Waterbury and one probably in West Hartford. Same thing going in the opposite direction towards Danbury. And until we address some of those issues, it's hard to convince people to move to Connecticut. Some places, some people are doing that, but for every large announcement you hear of a company coming in, there's usually a large announcement of somebody leaving or several smaller announcements that don't make a lot of headlines because they're a company of 50 or 100 or 200 people that just make a decision and don't hold a press conference to tell you they decided not to expand here.
Any other questions?
Yeah, how's the online survey going? How's the responsiveness in your towns?
I haven't seen the results yet. I've been I spent 3 days in judiciary, plus we had today all in appropriation, so I'm not quite sure I'm going to see when I'm going to start to see the results of that, start
You should
tabulating
make a plug
things.
for it.
Okay,
Got a
well,
big room of people here.
that's true. We do have an online survey going, questions about what people would like to see going on in Hartford and the kinds of policies we need to develop for the state of Connecticut going forward. So hopefully people will participate in that and I'll get some feedback. And if there are any other questions about anything?
Just one quick comment. I wanted to publicly thank you, Arthur, for your hospitality. Well, I was at the Judiciary Committee a couple Fridays ago. After sitting there for some 10 hours, Representative O'Neill spoke to the chair of the committee to ensure that I could speak.
You're welcome.
It's quite a
You're very
process.
welcome.
And I also appreciate your reasoned approach and your respectful dialogue with everyone who spoke there. That wasn't, in my opinion, the case with all of your colleagues, but I really appreciated it. And I also appreciated your support for the mump stock ban, and I appreciate your optimism for the potential of finding a framework for the ghost gun ban as well. And I appreciate it. Just thank you.
You're very welcome. I mean, I don't want to rehash it, but, one of the telling things to me was when the people who were opposed to the ban said, this thing reduces the accuracy of firearms. And whatever else, I don't know much about guns perhaps, but I know that you're supposed to be able to hit the target, and what you want to do is make them more accurate, not less accurate. So that seemed like a pretty straightforward thing. And ghost guns, the real core issue is we don't want people subverting the laws we have by selling to the next Adam Lanza a kit that he can use to manufacture an AR-15, because we don't allow AR-15s to be sold in Connecticut, and we certainly don't allow any kind of weapon like that to be sold to someone like him.
And I appreciate it. I think you understood the intent and you were clear, so thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Oh,
Arthur.
one other thank you for the Holocaust education bill, for you and Senator Berthel for putting that forth and being advocates of that. Thank you. It really matters.
Thank you, Arthur. Before we move on, I'd like to look for a motion to add to our agenda under bids and procurements, the rental bid that we've got coming up.
So moved.
Oh, I'll second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Thank you. Okay. Next is public comment. We ask that you limit it to 3 minutes. State your name and what your comment would like to be. Before we do that, excuse me just a minute. You can wait if you care to, but I'm sure you have a life outside of this.
Didn't want to be rude and ask,
That-
but
We'll let you know.
Okay.
I'm-
Well, I appreciate your
What's
time
that?
tonight, everybody. I really do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Name and address? Okay. if we
Okay. Good evening. Lorraine Marcantonio, Heritage Village. I want to open by thanking Tamith for the hard work she did in procuring the $2,520 grant from CCF. So that was good work. We need it. And I have a request that goes with that. Part of the grant is aimed to get all agencies, it says, that deal with seniors, to get them together, identify their concerns and the issues, and then find a way to address them. I know you mentioned Heritage Village, even though we're not an agency, we do make up 20% of the 34% of the seniors in Southbury. So, two things. Make sure we're included in any of the group that gets together to discuss. That's number one. Number two, I would ask for some form of transparency in communication on issues that are discussed and what comes up, so that the population of seniors in Southbury and Heritage Village knows what these head of the agencies are talking about. So again, Tamith, thank you very much. And my request, I hope it's attended to. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Joe, you look. 3 minutes, Joe.
Yeah, I got 3 minutes. No, it's a few sentences. So, Joe Ruggiero, 245 Skyview Drive, Southbury. Last summer, I hosted my extended family reunion at my house. Every year, I try to build or create something that amuses the younger kids who attend. We get together, and it's become a tradition. So, one year I did Mentos and soda, and that was a big mess. Another year, I created a water feature that you threw a softball at, and it sprayed you with water. Pressurized bottle that flew 50 feet in the air. So, the kids are always excited about it. And this past summer was at my house, so I cooked up this confetti water birdseed cannon that runs on compressed air. Okay? Shoots about 30, 40 feet in the air. Not tonight, though. Okay. I also had a previously created one that ran on propane. That looks a lot like a cannon. You hold it has a spark, so forth. Why am I talking about this tonight? Because I'm afraid that the state is trying to turn my lighthearted hobbyist whimsy into something criminal. I read through CT Bill 5540, and I know you're going to be talking about it tonight. I know Arthur voted against that particular bill in the Judiciary Committee, and I think that was smart. I might have made a weapon here that gets branded a gun. And it might make me into a Class D felon unless I figure out how to serialize and register it. I believe that's really wrong. I really think it's not fair. And I want to go on the record as being strongly against 5540. I don't have any opinion about the rest of it, but that particular one seems like a real slippery slope for a hobbyist like me. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Your name and your address.
Thomas Pietrini, 263 Horse Fence Hill Road. I had some comments that I had written out, and after listening to Arthur, once again I am disappointed in the way we are handling non-issues that are being made issues. I've been a firearms dealer in this town since the early 1990s. I've never sold a bump stock. I've never had anybody ask for one. It's a non-issue. All of a sudden, something happens with a nutcase out in Arizona, and we got to worry about more of our rights being taken away. Incrementally, every month, something happens. Our rights get diminished incrementally, day by day. You're talking about the law-abiding gun owners of Southbury. We have a right to defend ourselves under the Second Amendment. Because a certain group of individuals are unable to accept the fact they lost in the last elections, both national and local, the usual followers of our former first selectman continued the political theater in an attempt to see themselves as somehow relevant by bringing up a non-issue that has nothing to do with town business. One can only assume the reason for this is twofold: to keep their presence known to townfolk for future positions in town government, or more likely to continue the divisive policies and politics of the past administration. In reading Selectman Rosen's testimony to the Judiciary Committee regarding bump stocks and ghost guns, I have to ask, where have they been used in any legal way in Connecticut? They haven't. It's a non-issue. I've been in, as I said, I've been in the firearms business and never sold one. As far as ghost guns go, and where they're concerned, when you attempt to take people's God-given rights away by enacting laws that make criminals out of law-abiding citizens, they have nothing to lose by skirting the law with so-called ghost guns. As to state about compliance regarding the registration of AR rifles, during the last ban proposed by the Malloy administration, there is less than 20% compliance. So what they've done, all of the firearms out there that they banned, they made felons out of just about everybody that didn't register them. Same thing with their high-cap mags. It's just the asininity of what you people are doing is just boggles my mind. You think you're accomplishing something here by taking away a gun that's non-existent, that really doesn't do anything, okay, until somebody uses it in a bad manner. What about all of the guys that have committed these crimes that are on psychotropic drugs? What have you done about that? What have you done about fatherless homes? What have you done about that? You want to do something? Don't pick on the guns. They're an inanimate object. They can sit in a safe or in a wall or someplace for 100 years and never have anything happen.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any? Oh.
It's down a little bit. Michelle Barnes, Lumlot Road, Southbury, Connecticut. I just wanted to say that the last couple of years since we've had a new board, it has been nice to see cooperation and to see people have civil discourse and be able to accomplish matters that pertain to the town of Southbury. Last fall, I unfortunately had the feeling that certain people of the Democratic Party were coming forth to try to cause dissension again over the gun issue right in September, right before election time, which was in November. It is very disheartening to see people trying to cause divisiveness and division. It has been seen on the local level, and it has definitely been seen on our federal level, which is very disheartening. We are all American citizens, and we should work together and not try to bring up things that are going to cause civil discord among people and their philosophies and their ways of thinking, all right? The other thing I wanted to say was that instead of focusing on the guns, which seems to be the first place where people go, if people had acted appropriately with the terrible tragedy at the high school in Florida, that young gentleman who sorely needed psychiatric assistance and help, he was left to fall through the cracks. The federal government, the local police, everyone did not do their due diligence and follow through. And those are the people who really we should be focusing on helping. I have not seen the state of Connecticut push forward any type of legislation to help people who have mental issues, okay, who are mentally compromised. We talked about it after Sandy Hook. It got swept right under the rug. There are several people, I know several people who have children, young boys, unfortunately, for whatever reason during that particular age, that need mental help. There's no place for them to go. You look what happened to that gentleman who was the Iraq War veteran in Holy Land just a couple of weeks ago. He was brought to St. Mary's Hospital because he has PTSD and he couldn't get any help. He left. The next day he was up in Holy Land. The police shot him. Now he's in Garner Institute. Where is the help for those people? Let's focus on that kind of legislation in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Holly Sullivan. I live at 334 Brownbrook Road in Southbury, up in the Purchase. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for the work that's being done at the bottom of Spruce Brook Road. It is already within just a couple of weeks a much safer intersection for those that travel in and out of the Purchase every day.
Well, it took 20-some years.
Things are slow.
However, I am primarily here tonight to speak about the agenda item related to the Connecticut General Assembly House Bills 5540 and 5542. Like many other civic-minded citizens, I attended the Judiciary Committee hearing at the LOB in Hartford 2 weeks ago. I was very surprised upon signing in to see Selectman Rosen listed, and where the column said representing, it said Town of Southbury. I was not aware that my town was to be represented on bills pending the General Assembly. Upon reading Selectman Rosen's submitted written testimony, he stated that he intended to call for a vote to support these two bills, hence we're here tonight. In his written testimony, of which I have copies, Selectman Rosen stated that, quote, bump stocks take firearms, many of which have no place in the hands of civilians, and turn them into mass killing machines. I'd like to remind Selectman Rosen that this Connecticut General Assembly has already decided which firearms belong in the hands of civilians. Also, the ATF has also decided on the lawful ownership of bump stocks, but I suppose Selectman Rosen knows better. Regarding HB 5542, he submitted testimony that, quote, ghost guns have been used time and again to murder people. Yet when a law enforcement officer testified, it was stated that there are no records of a ghost gun ever being used to commit a crime in the state of Connecticut. Again, as an active participant in our system, I have presented both verbal and written testimony to the General Assembly on a number of occasions over the years. Selectman Rosen's testimony and debate with Representative Dubitsky was heated, disrespectful, and outright argumentative. I was embarrassed by our, quote, community steward for Southbury. What truly amazed me, though, was that Selectman Rosen did not stay for the duration of the hearing. He had preferential treatment and was allowed to speak sooner, as earlier stated. While several residents of the town of Southbury stayed there to express their opinions, he did not stay to hear us. I do not see Selectman Rosen as a steward or voice for our community. What I do see is divisiveness among neighbors that need not exist. In his words, quote, we are a town with a strong gun culture. Yes, and until a few months ago, it was a non-issue of contention in Southbury. I would like to urge the board not to be involved in issues reserved for our legislature. Our district has elected Representative O'Neill and Senator Berthel to be our voices in Hartford. Jobs they are doing with the full understanding and knowledge of the issues at play. This is not what the town of Southbury elected this board to do. In fact, had there been another candidate that better represented the people in the town last November.
You can submit that. It's been 3 minutes. I have to cut you short. You
Okay.
can submit the rest of it to the,
Thank
to
you.
the board.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment? I feel I'm at the high school.
Hey,
Your name and address, please.
my name? Oh, okay. I'm Paul Van Hardenberg, and I live on Jeremy Swamp Road. So here we go again. To reply to the left-wing radicals in our town, a few years ago we voted out divisive politicians and we got our town back on a productive path. But there remains a small contingent of divisive left-wingers that continue to insert their radical views and cause trouble. And we don't need it. Today, they're jumping on the bandwagon of gun control and harassing innocent gun owners for society's problems that are primarily related to mental health and drugs. But the facts and defining the real causes to this problem are too difficult for radicals to comprehend. They choose to play on emotions rather than facts. In doing so, they unwittingly contribute to a complex problem and cause divisiveness among everyone. Those who better understand the problem and have real solutions get drowned out because of the radicals' confused state of mind. Since we're discussing guns, it's a good time to remind the Board of Selectmen that this town would be wise to consider a gun range. All gun owners are potentially first offenders, either for themselves or for others. A gun range would allow people to become more proficient and safe. It's also a competitive sport that all, including our youth, can enjoy. I would also add that anyone having a vested interest in protecting our constitutional rights should consider to support the NRA and CCDL. Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Your name and take turns. Name and address, please.
It's Robert Barnes, Lumlot Road, Southbury. I believe Denise Forgione said it best in the Republican American article. She had to leave the Democrat Town Committee because of a radicalization of a certain group of Democrats. It's obviously clear what's going on here. We voted out divisiveness 3.5 years ago, and it's back. Therefore, I'm going to come back and I'm going to speak against the situation. Selectman Rosen can spend 10 hours up in Hartford, but in his first term, he failed to show up to most of the meetings for Park and Rec. Where is he representing the town? This issue took up how many meetings in October, November, and December when the town could have had other work done? But no, we had to cancel meetings, we ran out of room, we had to discuss this issue. So quite frankly, if this board were to support any of these bills, they're going to also support a governor who has called a group of people in the NRA terrorists. I find that very offensive. I am an NRA member. Personally, this needs to stop now. This is taking up way too much town time discussing a problem that is a non-issue. It is an issue that the Democrats want to keep nibbling away at your First, Second, Third, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights in this country. They will not stop until they are not happy, until the Constitution is trampled and destroyed, which means a lot to a lot of people who have served overseas. Whether it happens or not, this board is being injected into a state issue and a national issue because of one person who is working by ways and means of the radical Democrats, and that's Mike Rosen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment. Name and address, please.
My name is Rick Frederick.
Okay.
I live at 334 Brownbrook Road, Southbury. I wasn't going to make a comment, but I saw some head shaking when the confetti cannon was being displayed. Now, when it comes to the ghost gun bill, we don't know what is actually going to be banned, and before we jump to support that, I think we actually need to know what's going to be defined, because I actually work directly with the ATF, and I have a shelf full of historic legacy firearms at my job that belong in a museum and are destined for a museum. And by that ban, all of those could be covered and could be destroyed. And that would be historical representations of some of these companies just being wiped out because people are afraid of guns. Now that's nonsense. I personally have some black powder rifles. Are they going to be banned by this? And you want to shake your head and say that confetti gun isn't going to be. Well, what's defined? How about your door stopper outside the door that's an artillery shell that with minor modifications could take out this entire room? What is going to be banned by that? We don't know. So before we jump to support any of these bills, we need to know what's actually in them. And the same with the bump stock ban. It wasn't just bump stocks, and if you stayed to listen to my testimony, you would have heard what I had to say. It's not just bump stocks. It's also the trigger cranks. It's also anything that could be construed as something turning a firearm into something automatic. And I thank Representative O'Neill for asking me questions clarifying what I saw with that. And they did take out some of the more aggressive language out of that bill, and I thank them for that. But nowhere has a trigger crank or a binary trigger been used in a crime. So again, this is a non-issue and it's not a Southbury issue. And there's no reason for Southbury to be jumping on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jamie Tsatouris. I live at 161A Heritage Village. And just because something hasn't ever been a crime doesn't mean it can't become a crime. And all this is about keeping people safe and their families safe. And I personally don't see what all the fear is about why people have to be so obsessed about having guns and using guns in this country. I think we need to focus on the real issues that are causing people to feel disenfranchised, people that have lost their jobs, or they have health issues, or whatever it might be. And we need to band together as a community and try to find common solutions to our problems. Not use a gun to handle all the problems. That's what's really at stake here, I feel. And I think we need to start doing that right now. And all these minutiae about whether a gun has this or whether a gun doesn't have that or whatever it is, people have a right to have guns, but they don't have unlimited rights to bring their guns wherever they want to. Even Justice Scalia said that. So I think that's what's really important here. We need to focus on the real issues and solve our real problems and not have a gun be used to solve the problems.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Do I need to get 2 lines?
I think we're good.
Your name and address, please.
Rich Collette, 386 West Purchase Road. If you go to the Library of Congress website, right alongside the Constitution are the Federalist Papers. And in the Federalist Papers, it's pretty darn clear that it was intended for the citizens to have armament equal to or in excess of what the standing army of the federal government had. The whole discussion about whether citizens should have weapons of war, so-called, is a moot point because the entire intent of the Second Amendment was to have us be as strong as the standing army. I'm tired of people bringing up whether or not we have that right. It's there, it's ours, and the language is not going to change that. And I'm very sick and tired that I have to skip my son's homework assignment tonight, helping him to come defend my rights from my board or members of my board that misrepresent what my rights are. That's enough from me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any other public? Oh, okay. Thought we were there.
This is a contentious issue. My name is Rich Boritz. I live at 401A Heritage Village, and I want to talk about the bump stock and ghost gun bills. And I want to thank Selectman Rosen for proposing this resolution, because I think it's very important that we all have this honest discussion. I do not appreciate, nor do I think others would appreciate, being called names. And I think we need to be respectful, and I don't always see that here. And I want to make sure that you understand that this issue, where 35,000 Americans are killed every year, is not a trivial issue. And it's not one that the so-called radical Democratic left don't think about. Because I've spent years in the military. I have been trained on a handgun, machine gun, crew-served weapon, an automatic weapon, if you want to know what that means, an artillery piece that could also fire more than enough to destroy this building. As a matter of fact, to destroy this town. So I take my knowledge seriously, and I think that anyone who diminishes the concern that we have for children being killed, for grandmothers being killed, for teachers being killed, for students being killed, for people in the military being killed. They do not do a justice to our lives. The first line in the Declaration of Independence was, when in the course of human events, a certain people need to free themselves from oppression. That's what we did. And I'll be unable to support people who feel that because they have an interpretation that differs from mine, I don't belong to be here. I don't take that. I do. And I think everybody who wants to solve this problem needs to sit in the room with me and others like me and have a discussion rather than demonize us. So, Mrs. Barnes,
Sir,
Let's not name people out.
okay.
Please.
So I will invite anyone
3 minutes.
to come and talk to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Seeing no one, we will close that segment of our agenda. Okay, everybody has announcements and correspondence in there to look over, including the letter from Resident Trooper Sergeant on the street lights. You can read that. Next up is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second it.
Okay, any discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? And it passes. Thank you. There's the minutes of March 8th special meeting and the minutes of March 15th regular meeting.
Move they be approved.
Have a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? We're all there. Transfers. Bill will explain the transfers to the board, please.
Good evening, all. There's two transfers here affecting salary. The budgeted increases that were given in July, plus the settlement of the police and the Teamsters contract. One requires a town meeting, and this one here does not. And there's two others that require town meetings. One is the pension. You recall for the last few years, our actuary has come up with a 7-year plan to bring us up to 85% funded. This is the amount she recommends we contribute next year. Our practice has been to pass the transfer this year so that in our financials it is earmarked when we close the year for next year's $180,000. And the final number is $700,000 for our bridge repairs. If you'll recall in the budget meetings, we have a list of 10 different bridges that are our responsibility. It's an 80-20. In addition, there's another 30 which are classified as bridges. There was a schedule. It's up on the website. This will kickstart the fund balance, the reserve fund for the bridges.
We've never had a reserve fund for bridges.
We have not. That is correct.
And that comes out of this year's. That's coming out of the current budget.
The 700,000 is
Yeah.
coming from the fund balance, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
All these transfers will be done this year.
So, if you remember the bridge we had that went down, and we were trying to get ahead of this, and much like our roads, same, you know, the deal. Any questions of Bill on this? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to resolve that the Southbury Board of Selectmen hereby approves and refers the following transfers to the Board of Finance: 18-11, 18-12, and 18-13. The 1811 to transfer money to cover labor contracts, 1812 to cover a 7-year funding plan per the Board of Finance schedule, and to fund 15-year scheduled bridge projects. Do I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? Call the motion. All approved?
Aye.
Anybody nays or any abstentions? Okay, on the next one, we have a resolution, be it resolved, be it further resolved that the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Chairman, do we have to, I just didn't hear it as part of the motion, do you have to schedule a town meeting as well?
Correct.
On the other one?
And my understanding, we will not have a quorum at the next board meeting. So we don't have to schedule for that day. We can schedule for the first, that's not a problem, Bill, right?
Not a problem.
First meeting in May.
Meeting in May, if that's okay. So I would say the resolution, be it further resolved that the Board of Selectmen hereby schedules a town meeting to be held on May what?
3rd.
May 3rd at 7 p.m. in room 205 of the Town Hall to act on the transfers above.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Thank you, Bill. I think that's, do we have more?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
you got to recommend the first one also to the Board of Finance. Number 10 needs to be referred to them.
Okay, can I have the motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then it carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
So just a note, including the press, there will be no, there'll be a cancellation of the Board of Selectmen's meeting, the next board meeting because of lack of quorum. Okay, bids and procurements. John Cattell, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir. Hello, John.
Good evening, everyone. What you see in front of you, the first one is I'd like to get approval for the board to approve the use of a bid that was put out in 2016 by the town of Fairfield. It's a bid that is for hot in place recycling bid. This is another tool in our roadway maintenance bucket to be able to use. It's a very favorable bid. As you can see, about 4 or 5 other towns have already piggybacked on this bid. The vendor is willing to allow us to piggyback on it. And we'll hold that price of $3.79. Hot in place, I think I've kind of explained it once before. It's kind of like a train of equipment where you heat up the asphalt, you scarify it and pull it up, you add some rejuvenators to it, it lays it right back down and then gets rolled. After which then a top coat will be put on. We'll wind up putting the chip seal with the fog seal on top of that. It's a lot less expensive than doing a full milling job on it and then coming in with fresh new asphalt.
How does the cost compare to 379 compared to?
If we're looking at a different means to do that, you're probably talking about $15 a square yard or so to just do like a 2-inch mill and replace.
Really?
So this is about $379 to add another $250 at most to do the chip seal on top of it. So you're maybe around $6.25, $6.30. So yeah, more than a little over a third. So probably about 40% the cost of it.
How many roads do you intend to be looking at?
Probably we're looking at doing 3 roads.
Do you have an approximate cost on
How many
what
square yards is that?
3 roads maybe?
It'll be about 20,000 square yards for the 3 roads.
You expect me to do
And
that?
Round up. 7 times 20.
Right. So it's a substantial savings to use it this way. Not every road is, you can't do this on every road, but we've picked a few that are still in a good enough condition that we think that this will work. It's something else we'd like to introduce to the town and keep going with our road preservation.
Now, the town of Fairfield, they only had one bidder?
They only had one bidder, which was stated in the bid. There was a second bidder who missed the bid. That's an out-of-state company. Their technique of heating it up is a little bit different, and I've seen that one down in other communities operate, and I think this one is a little better process.
So this,
Yeah, their brand is like a fire-breathing dragon, because as it goes down, you got flames shooting out all over the place.
Careful of the brush and trees.
Right.
so this technique though is very specific. It's very, so there's not a lot.
There's
of
there's only two that I know of. Those
Okay.
two. So that's why.
It's not like we're.
Yeah, it's.
Going to bid wouldn't make any sense.
I don't think you'd get any. You'd only get those two that would try and put the bid into it, and I'm looking at holding a 2016 price. Plus the other vendor. This is 2016, 2015. Their bid was 20% higher than what this one would be. So I'd expect them to come in again higher.
So you're only aware of two companies that do it. One of them is the one we're looking at. The other one also bid on the 2016. It was
He did not bid on 2016. They missed a
bid on
bid,
some-
but he bid on the 2015.
okay.
They used the 2015, and it was for. I figured I'd get this question. $4.56 a square yard for their 2015 bid.
Okay.
So this is $3.79.
Why are the prices still being held 3 years after the bid?
John's just that good.
My speculation would be that I think they're trying to get this process used more in, I have seen it used in Bridgewater, Connecticut. I know that road, I traveled it to work for quite some time afterwards, and it seems to hold up in certain conditions. And I think you'll probably see more and more of this in the industry, and I'm not gonna speak for the industry, but I was in the industry and I do know of it. And I think it's, quite frankly, they're trying to get this more widely accepted. It's probably good on certain roads, cul-de-sac road that's in really bad shape. Get rid of all that material, you'd have to do full depth reclamation on that road, which is extremely expensive. So without the heavy wear, actually the road up by Campbell's is a heavily traveled road, and it stood up pretty well. So I think that's kind of why the vendor is.
Yeah.
The more they do, the more volume they do, the more work they have, the better.
Do you know if they bid it in Bridgewater? Or
That
how
was
they went
many
about-
years ago.
Oh, you're talking, okay, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see a road that was done and wonder how it works, I've seen that, that road is.
We've been talking about trying this for well over a year now. Do we
Right.
have a lot of other roads that would be candidates for these?
I got, like I said, I plan on using it for 3
To try it, yeah.
to get it going, and then we'll see if it works out well. We'll then look at other roads to use it as we go forward in future programs. But there's a good cost savings to it, and certain candidates. It's like everything. It's another tool in the toolbox to keep our roads in good condition.
I didn't see anything in the bid policy that allows us to piggyback on someone else's bid in this scenario if we're talking about a purchase over $15,000. Was there is there a particular provision of the bid policy that we're looking to?
Not that I know of.
go
That's why I'm
under?
bringing to the full board for acceptance.
So I think.
You asking for a waiver
We
of the
can
bid
ask for a
policy?
waiver based on what.
Or is there a provision that we're relying on that we believe applies to this scenario?
No, I think what John's saying was he didn't see anything in the bid policy when he came. That's why he's before the board. Otherwise, we would have done the bid or whatever, explained it. And like I said, because it's unique and only 2 people that even do this. The other process, like he said, is there are people who their trees have been singed. I think
Yeah, there's like I say, I've heard of complaints with the other process, with I guess your air qualities, around, because I've seen this done in the other one done in Bridgeport, and I've had when I do it around the schools, having to shut down the HVAC systems because of certain, it's like a burning smell on it. And there are complaints with vegetation on it. This is a little bit different. It's more of an infrared than just a straight flame going out. There is heat, you know, you're raising the temperature up to.
It's unnerving, I think, the flames that, you know, and was 20% more. So I think that's why John is here. We're trying to get, you know, it did, for the bid policy, we could go through that. We could get one bid and because there's not many other companies, only that one other company, and then the price could go up over the 2016. I doubt it would be less. I don't think they could give us a lower bid than they're already doing for other towns, because I don't think they could do that. It would have to be.
So you're confident that we could not get 3 bids putting it out to bid?
Correct.
And your understanding is there's 2 companies that do it. One is giving us their price that was set a couple years ago, and the other one, the last time they bid something, they were above that price.
Correct.
Okay. So do you believe it's neither feasible nor in the best interest of the town to utilize the bid policy?
In this case, yes. I believe that it's best to piggyback off a bid from the other municipality.
Thank you.
So.
I'll make a motion.
In the best interest of the town.
Okay.
Number 17 of the bid policy will be waived. We'll use that as the guidance for what we're doing.
Okay. Made and seconded. Any other discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? It's carried. All right. John, I asked, the other thing was the bids on we added that to the agenda, the rental bids.
Do you want to vote on the actual resolution? We waive the policy.
Oh, we waived the policy. Now we have to, sorry. Okay. Entertain the motion for resolve that the Board of Selectmen, upon the recommendation of the Director of Public Works, hereby approve the town of Southbury utilizing the town of Fairfield's hot in place recycling bid as submitted on the attached documents.
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. Next would be a discussion about the rental bid results that are out there.
So each year we basically we've had 7 pre-approved vendors that we send out a annual bid for their prices for renting equipment. This includes the piece of equipment and an operator. This year we had 5 responses to the bid. We had a bid opening on March 22nd. Present was Jim Sugden, Noreen Thompson, and myself. We came up with the input of what we've asked for all the various equipment. This is where for us to rent trucks for hauling material, excavators, rollers, bulldozers, whatever we might need. The way the system works is, based on what job we're doing, we'll do an estimate of how many hours it's going to entail. We go through and do a spreadsheet based on each of the vendors that replied as to what their cost would be, come up with a bottom line, and then for that job, it would be that vendor to do that job. So that gets done for each time we do a certain road project or similar type project.
Any questions of John on the?
I have a nitpicky question. Some of these prices, if you look at the, like 2A, the excavator, there's 3 different items, but they have different prices. They're labeled the same. I'm just curious, so what, like the last one is $110, but the other 2 are.
They submitted 3 prices for 3 different, they're still all 3 quarter cubic yard excavators, but they're different makes and models. Yeah, in their, I didn't go through and say, okay, it's for, they'll, in their submitted bid, it listed what type of machine.
You know the difference between, okay.
So George, a little clarification, in the equipment industry, you could put a 3/4 yard bucket on a 200 class excavator. That's the weight of
I
the.
do that all the time.
That has to do with the weight and the horsepower of the
That's what I use.
excavator.
Is that what
You can also put a 3/4 yard bucket onto a 120 class or 160 class, and you don't get as much production out of it. So I think what it boils down to, we have to have some discretion as to what class machine you may be putting on the job, depending on the reach that you may need to. So there needs to be that clarification, so.
But that was provided to you, it's just.
Yeah, that's all, right,
Yeah.
for the purposes of this.
I don't know much, but I know.
If they offer 2 or 3 different pieces of machine in the same kind of category, that's why we add the extra prices on it.
Take it away.
Okay. Any other questions of John on this? Entertain a motion for the resolution?
So moved.
I got it
Second.
made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Okay, next up, on unfinished business, Selectman Rosen's request to discuss bills 5540 and 5542. We've heard some talk tonight. Mike?
Hi, Mike. First, I want to thank everybody for coming who spoke out. While with some of you, certainly we disagree on the issue, I absolutely respect your right to speak out. And to those who were in Hartford at the Judiciary Committee who I did not get to hear, I apologize that after almost 12 hours I did have to leave to get home to my family. But I did read every piece of testimony that was submitted online, both from our residents and others. And I watched the most recent testimony streaming online. And everyone who came, giving up time with their kids, et cetera, thank you. I really do appreciate it. This is the dialogue that I think we do need to have. And I am a Democrat. And both of these bills received bipartisan support through the Judiciary Committee. The bump stock ban, overwhelming bipartisan support. The vote was 36-5 or something like that. And our 3 Republican representatives all supported it. And there was good reasoned rational dialogue. There was work that fixed some of the language that some were opposed to. And there might be further adjustment of language, but the intent of both of these bills is really what I was talking about. I don't believe, as I stated when I first brought this up, I very consciously tried to choose what I felt was and what has been broadly viewed as 2 nonpartisan issues. Both of these have received bipartisan support. Doesn't mean that means every Democrat nor every Republican agrees. But there were Republicans and Democrats who voted for both these bills. I do think that this is a Southbury issue, if it is a Connecticut issue. We are residents of the state. We have some precedent here of speaking out when we felt our residents were being mistreated potentially or put at risk potentially. I believe this is an analog. So I'd like us to have a discussion. I very consciously, last time I was here, didn't ask for a vote then. I asked everybody to do some homework, to study. I gave copies of the bills and links to the bills. So I really want to have the discussion. I think we can go one at a time if you'd like. But I would state also that both of these bills also have the public support and testimony of the Connecticut Police Chiefs Association. Both those bills had their support. They spoke at the testimony as well. And I think the thought here is about intent. There was a lot of good discussion about the bills on both sides of the issue. But the intent is what I do believe was the reason that they ultimately both got passed by the Judiciary Committee, both with bipartisan votes, and will now go to the House first and then on to the Senate. And I do believe this is the type of issue we should as a board speak out on. I did not represent, and I actually multiple times in my testimony, both written and verbally, made it very clear that I did not speak on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. I made it very clear that I proposed a resolution that we would be voting on in an upcoming meeting, and that I hoped we would gain bipartisan support for those resolutions. I did not check in as Southbury Selectman. I don't know how that happened. I told them I was there. I believe somebody, whether it might have been Arthur or someone else, said, there he is. But so I want to make that clear. I didn't do that. And I didn't pretend to speak on behalf of the town of Southbury. I spoke for myself. But as a selectman, I certainly So I want to have a discussion. I don't know if you get how you guys feel, if you want to go one at a time, or if you want to, if you want to start at 5542 with bump stocks and then talk about 5540. I want to have as healthy a discussion as we can have, and then put both to a vote, and then move on.
Anybody else? Justin, you have anything to add?
I would point out, and again, I would echo Mike's comments that it's nice to hear from everybody here in town. A couple people mentioned that they're members of the NRA. Right after the Las Vegas shooting, the NRA came out and said that the laws concerning bump stock should be reviewed. So I think that's the first time that I can recall them moving in any sort of a direction towards restricting any sort of access to weapons. So it didn't seem that that would be a terribly controversial move. But, I know for some folks that there are basically no good gun restrictions, but I would disagree with that. On ghost guns, I kind of wish Arthur was still here. I'd love to hear what his proposed amendment was. I am sensitive to Joe's concern and the other gentleman's concern about his historical weapons. So maybe that particular one isn't fully baked yet. But again, if the police chiefs are behind it, I think I'm behind that as well. So that's right.
Southbury is not, we don't make insults, and we talked about this last public hearing at the high school. So I echo Mr. Boritz's comments about there shouldn't be any personal attacks for anybody bringing up a topic that they are very passionate about. So I would ask that people refrain from those comments. I don't think this conversation has a seat at our table. It shouldn't be something we're spending time on. I value Mike's passion, and I value the passion of those people that came here tonight and continue to debate gun laws and gun rights, but it's for our legislators to legislate. We're here for a different purpose, and we're here to keep you safe, and we do that. We have a nice police department, and we are a part of the state trooper program. We always have, you always have access to us to talk to us about your concerns. We try to be responsive. In the past, we've acted on certain things that truly do affect our town. We joined the Waterbury lawsuit against the drug problem that pervades our town, a legitimate concern of many people. To differentiate the two bills, I think at our level is almost futile. I personally have my feelings about it, but I'm not sitting at this table for my personal feelings. I'm sitting at this table to represent the town. I think every life matters, and we should do our very best to protect every life. But people have an obligation to not infringe on the rights of others. And we have big problems in this country. We have cultural problems with mental illness and drugs and texting and driving. I read a lot of the testimony too. And I respected those people for taking the time to spend those hours upon hours of going up there. And, when I have the passion about a subject, then I'm going to do that. So I understand where you're all coming from. I truly do. But I just don't think the conversation really has a seat at our table.
Anybody else? Discussion?
So I'll just add, I'll echo that a little bit and add that I'd like to thank, I'd like to thank everyone that came again and spoke tonight for and against this topic. But I'd like to thank our representatives, Representative O'Neill, Representative Labriola, and Senator Berthel, for their leadership on this and other issues, and for the work they do for our town. and for their districts, because that's their job. They were elected to represent our town and their districts in the legislature to deal with these types of issues and other issues. I believe that we were elected for a very different purpose. We are not elected to lobby the legislature on bills that may be of interest to certain members of this board. I certainly have bills I'm interested in. I'm sure all of us have a bill or two pending in the legislature right now that we might be interested in. But I don't believe it's the role of this board to go through all the pending legislation and, have a debate and determine where the Southbury Board of Selectmen is on those various bills. We have elected representatives who have been elected for that purpose. Also, given the fact that that's my view, that I don't believe that that's a fundamental role of our board, I am extremely uncomfortable as a member of this board voting on a resolution on behalf of the people of the town of Southbury who did not elect me to address these types of issues. They elected me to address very, very different types of issues. And I have views on these issues, and I'm happy to share them with anyone here after the meeting. But I don't believe that that's the role of this body. That's the role of the legislature, and we have people that represent us well in the legislature. And I just want to comment on one other thing. We have commented on legislation before, as Selectman Rosen noted. That was the Region 15 bill. And that is not comparable at all to the bills that are presently before us for discussion. The Region 15 bill, you had a situation where the bill impacted one town in the entire state, the town of Southbury. It impacted our funding, it impacted our voting rights, it impacted our ability to dictate how our funds are spent for education. That is most certainly the role of the Southbury Board of Selectmen, to protect our residents, to protect our tax dollars, and to protect the people that we represent and our students, and to not cede control of our funds to another town. It was not only appropriate for us to comment on that legislation, but I believe it was our job and we were required to comment on that legislation. That is not the case with the bills that are brought to us today. So I thank Mike for his passion on this issue. I'm fine having discussions. That's why we all agreed to put this on the agenda at Selectman Rosen's request. If a member would like to discuss something, I think that we should have discussions. But I do not believe that this is the proper role of our board, and therefore I urge rejection of our board taking any position on these issues. Thank you.
George?
Being the last one to talk, I think everybody said pretty much everything that can be said almost. I think it's a negative precedent to set if we start toning in and voting on various bills that are before the House. We're not, as has been so eloquently stated, that's not our role. That's not why we've been voted here to sit at these tables. We're here to run the town of Southbury and not to make decisions that are made at the state level. I agree with Jason that the bill we did take a stand on, the SB 1019 regarding Middlebury and Southbury Region 15, was an appropriate stance because it affected us. This bill affects a lot of people, not just Southbury, and I think it should be handled, and it does seem to be handled quite appropriately by the people at the state level. It sounds like they're parsing through it. So I'd leave it to them and let them figure it out. And I think we should stick to what we've been hired to do, and that's to run the town of Southbury.
Hired?
So, well,
Elected.
fired, elected.
We do get a stipend though.
He's
so I
hired.
guess-
That's right.
You can get a couple.
You can,
I'd just like to say that, yes, I agree with everything that's said here, but one point that was brought up by Mike is that what we looked at the bill as proposed goes through a process up in Hartford. For us to make a vote or determination on that particular bill, it has morphed and changed to what it is right now. And that can change some more as it goes through legislature. They can change it, modify it, amend it. So we would be, when doing that, we would be giving support to something that we haven't seen, which that's their job, is to see the final bill as presented, amended, and done. I had looked at some of the first legislation in those bills, and I disagreed with some of them. I won't say which one. And that's my personal view. I do not go to Hartford to let my personal views be heard up there, because I don't think that's my job. And especially being the first selectman, I take that very seriously on going up there and either testifying for something like this, for or against, again with Region 15. So, is there any other discussion on these two bills? Mike?
Well, first, thank you all for the, as usual, respectful debate and dialogue. But I would like to call for a vote on resolution, resolution first regarding HB 5542, and that concerning bump stocks and other means of enhancing the rate of fire of a firearm. I believe that you are right, Jason. Part of our job and part of why we supported the other bill for SB 1019 is our job is to protect the people of Southbury. In that case, it was about the educational system and about the taxpayers. I do believe it is an analog. I'd like to make a motion for a vote on the resolution as distributed regarding HB 5542.
I'll second it.
Motion to vote on a resolution that we have a resolution?
We do, but it's really kind of changed a lot. You were like, it was supposed to vote on what they were gonna, it was, for the time it was written.
I will read forth my proposed resolution, is what it's saying, and and I will, because it was before the resolve that Southbury Board of Selectmen hereby approves the release of the following public statement in support of raised Bill HB 5542, an act concerning bump stocks and other means of enhancing the rate of fire of a firearm being considered by the Connecticut General Assembly in the current legislative session. We write as a, quote, we write as a united and bipartisan Board of Selectmen for the town of Southbury to voice our support for raised HB 5542. A bill's statement of purpose is to, quote, ban the sale or transfer, possession, manufacturing, or use of bump stocks or other accessories to increase the rate of fire of a firearm. This is not a partisan issue, but rather one for which we believe there is common ground and agreement in the interest of the public safety and general welfare of all Southbury residents and that of our neighbors across Connecticut. We are just state representatives and all members of the Connecticut General Assembly to vote in favor of this legislation. We do so in the spirit of collaboration and reasoned necessary action. HB 5542 is currently being considered in the Connecticut General Assembly. We encourage residents to voice their support for HB 5542 as soon as possible by contacting House leadership and those in the House that represent Southbury, including many of our representatives. We further encourage residents to contact Senate leadership, including, and we name the representatives. Sincerely, Town of Southbury Board of Selectmen, all of us in here.
That's the motion?
That is the motion.
That's the second? Any discussion on this?
Yeah, as I hear the motion again, and given my concern with us getting into this discussion, and not feeling that that's the proper role of our board, I don't believe that it would be proper for us to vote for or against this resolution. Therefore, I'd like to make a motion to postpone the matter indefinitely.
I'm looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Made and seconded. Any discussion on postponing indefinitely a vote on this matter?
I was just going to abstain from his motion.
Okay. Any other discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor of this?
Which one are we voting on?
We're going to vote on to postpone indefinitely. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
And it carries. Okay.
I will abstain.
Oh, I forgot. Abstain.
It's an option.
Okay.
I'd like to
Okay.
make the other motion on the other resolution regarding 5540, which was also shared. If you'd like me to read the resolution again, I will. We did also share. It's the identical statement regarding HB 5540, an act concerning ghost guns, and the permit application process being considered by the Connecticut General Assembly.
Hearing no second, I will take that as we're not going to discuss that. Okay.
Thanks all.
Unfinished business. Under new business, we have Northwest Regional Workforce Investment Board resolution. Okay.
Jeff, can I ask a question on
Yeah.
the thing we talked about 3 weeks ago about the contract for the recycling? Do you want to bring that back up again, or are we not ready for that?
John, do you have it?
That's why I hung around.
I mean, I thought
we
that-
can add it.
Should that be unfinished business?
I don't think you need to push it at this moment.
Okay.
So he's, yeah.
I didn't know if you were ready.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I don't know if you had an update.
Yeah. If we do, we need to deal with our garbage, believe it or not.
Well, yeah, still out there. The group is negotiating the contract. I think that'd be better at least to find, I got some drafts of it to get an idea, but I think it's better for them to at least complete their portion of it, so I give you something to actually look at and say this is what we're doing.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. The Northwest Regional Workforce Investment Board resolution. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion on this? All in
like a
favor?
no-brainer.
Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay. Request to discontinue a portion of Depot Hill Road. There's a map if anybody's interested. There's a resolution to refer to 8-24 for the planning to review it and make a recommendation to us. We have a resolution.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Jeff, I think the one thing I didn't see in there is who owns it.
Pomperog Office Park, Inc., I think?
Yeah, part of that group up there. Well, no, we actually,
No,
Oak Tree.
Oak Tree.
Is that who? Yeah,
no,
that's-
they're the ones looking to buy it.
Right.
They're the ones looking to buy it.
Who is
I-
that?
It's,
Oak Tree,
it's Stone. Stone.
Oak Tree.
George?
Well,
Stone.
No, that's fine, I just want to make sure. there's no
Right.
conflict.
right, technically it's them.
Right. Good. Clear. I have to recuse myself from material conflict.
That's why I-
Can you, and technically you're supposed to state the reason.
Because, well, I work for the law firm that's representing the buyer.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this? Call the vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Good.
No, I'm not doing anything.
Recused. Thank you. All right, first Selectmen's update. As someone said, Spruce Brook Road, the grubbing is beginning. We are looking at the timetable, trying to make this as easy on the public and quick as we can. Once we get that information on the closings and when, I'm fairly confident in the contractor who was awarded the bid on completing this in a pretty close timeline. They're very, if you remember, they did, Justin and I certainly remember, they did Route 172 bridge over a weekend. Don't expect that. Took 20 years to get it, over 20 years to get it approved. It's not overnight. I also attended Lutheran Home, celebrated 100 years. Cindy and I were there. It was kind of nice. My family has been there. Frankly, just to let you know, as a Lutheran Home, there's actually Catholic people there, and there's a lot of Jewish people that go there, and it's not denominational, but it's a great facility. Another good news is we're starting the Eagle, I'm not sure if it's finished, I haven't been updated on it, but the Eagle Scout project at Community Park with the gardens, shaping up very well, which is you know, everybody wanted this done, and how are we going to take care of it? So this Eagle Scout has stepped forward and is moving forward on it, so the rabbits hopefully will be kept at bay.
Man, the weather cooperates. The weather cooperates, and the ground doesn't freeze again this week.
And I want to apologize to the board. I'm always in charge of the weather, and I'm not doing so good this spring. It's just not coming, but.
We can blame you for it.
There you go. And for showers.
We're looking at making the final decisions on design of East Flat Hill Road at Transylvania Brook, a project that will be the year after that, hence our funding of the reserves for the bridges to get it where we need to do. The other good news is the computers are ordered. I know that's, I don't know if you, they've been dying a slow death.
There was a celebration behind you, Jeff. You didn't see it. There was a celebration.
Well, they've been falling off, and it's gotten pretty frustrating. So I think we got our lifespan out of them, believe it or not. And there's a plan to deploy them. I've gone over with Ray and to Jennifer's training for Windows 10 for our employees along with it is being set up so we can get people up to speed. As I said, Ray has come up with some ideas on other training, so you know we could all use it. Voya came to Town Hall, and they went over retirement education for our employees with the defined contribution plan, and they'll be meeting with us from time to time, so that's working out well. I went to CCM, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, on April 3rd, and we had speakers. What was interesting was Robert Petroselli and Jim Smith, two very much smarter than me people, know a lot about business and finance, and the Commission on Fiscal Stability and Economic Growth. From what I heard, and Arthur said, they're working on implementing some, others, it's not an unpainful pill. Again, these are two gentlemen who have proven track records in the community and their businesses and finance. And no disrespect to some of our people in Hartford, but these people know how to grow businesses and making them work. The interesting thing is, I'm not sure what's going to come out of Hartford, and I can only equate it to the person who goes to a financial planner because their credit cards are maxed out and their mortgage is being foreclosed on, and you know they have no money for retirement. They go to the financial planner because they don't know what to do. The financial planner said, this is the plan, this is how it worked, this is how you should execute it. And then the person goes to the financial planner says, I'm not sure that would work. Okay. So that was probably the basic feeling amongst the group of towns that were at CCM. And I just hope, I'm not saying it's perfect, it's not something everybody likes, but we need to do something. They want us, as they said, get the fire out and get wind in our sails and start moving. So I urge everybody, if whoever wants to look at it.
Could you shoot us a copy of the PDF?
Yeah, I can get it to you. Yeah. So I just want everybody to know it's out there.
Can I chime in on that quickly, Jeff?
Yes, you can.
As a member of the Board of Trustees of the Connecticut Board of Realtors, we recently met on this document. Our president was one of the members of the commission. And I think it was Mr. Smith, I forget which other gentleman, they each contributed $100,000 to make this commission happen, because they got created with a charge to have a report in like 75 days with $0. So two of the guys threw in $100,000 each. They got Yale to throw in 100, and
I think they said that there were other people who contributed.
Yeah, so they got together $300,000 to $400,000, and they did a very good job
In 75 days.
Yeah, there's something in that report for everybody to hate. Basically, tolls are in there. Higher contributions from teachers are in there. There's all sorts of things in there, but our take on it as a group was that it's got to be taken whole hog. People cannot go in there and pull out the things that they like, because it will not work if that's done. But it is an interesting read.
I agree. That's exactly what, and my concern is whether I like tolls or not. This is a plan. This is in place. They have the numbers. People who do this and know what they're doing have put this out. So I would encourage to read, decide. They are talking about piecemealing, taking this section and doing, and this section and doing. I agree with you, Justin. I agree with you. It needs, but I don't know if that'll happen.
True.
How do we get a copy of this report?
I can get it out through PDF. I'll get it.
Okay.
Try to get a hold of it and.
It's on ct.gov.
I'm sure it's available somewhere. I
Yeah.
just didn't know where.
Betsy, will you pull that off of that and get it out to the board for it?
Thank you.
Thank you. So anyway, that's, it was an interesting talk, I can tell you that. It's impressive to be in a room with people of that caliber and knowledge. So anyway, that's my report. Do we have reports from liaisons? Mr. Bertram.
Sounds like our chairman has had a busy 3 weeks. Mine has not been quite that busy. I did miss the road study committee meeting. It's held at like 2 in the afternoon, and that particular day I had business things I had to take care of. I just couldn't get to the meeting, so I'm sorry about that. I do enjoy going and learning about the projects, and I'm always interested in that. IT steering hasn't had a meeting recently. Neither has the Region 15 Space Needs Study. I have a feeling that group is defunct.
Has there been any notice about that, or
I've
any
called
communication?
and I've asked, and I hear nothing. I've sent emails. I'll reach out again since you asked and see what's happening, but I have heard nothing about it. The group seems like it's gone into zombie
Hibernation.
Streetscape lights are a percolating issue. There's been a lot of discussion. There was a letter from the police department regarding the dimming of lights, which I'm suggesting we don't dim the lights, but that's just my personal opinion. Everyone can have their own. There's an extra cost involved with the equipment required to dim the lights. That extra equipment is subject to failure over long periods of time. I don't think the savings justify the equipment, the extra equipment expenditure in terms of increased, failure modes and reliability costs down the road. I'm recommending against that. Plus, what I hear the police saying is that they really appreciate having the bright lights on the street, and I can totally understand that reasoning. So beyond that, it's in your hands, Jeff, as far as where we go from here, RFQ-wise. It's always in your hands.
Unfortunately, no. Okay, Justin.
EDC's most recent meeting was a victim to the weather. They moved it to the Monday that we met with Mr. Barth, so I was not able to attend that meeting. They are still working on Restaurant Week, hoping to have it this fall. The Riverview Cinema grand opening is coming up, even though obviously they've been open for a while. On IPOC, we met this week. Obviously, IPOC and members of the Board of Finance and us recently got together for the presentation on our fiduciary responsibilities, which is very informative, obviously, and important. All of the 3 accounts are doing very well. They continue to do well. And there was actually some talk at this most recent meeting of putting a little more risk in play with the reserve fund.
I would say there's probably, in general, people can think one way or the other, but it's a little more complex when you see the what's out there, so I don't want people to think we're taking,
No, we're not, no. We're making a very modest adjustment to a couple of the funds that are being used. And our, our consultants at FIA are clearly top-notch and very much
and that decision was pretty much made based on what the performance has been, meaning the money that we have, that gives that buffer. So
As long as it meets Bruce Bart's
Yes.
requirements.
We don't wanna get in
Bruce's
trouble.
requirements.
Bruce Bart's requirements.
And then
We all know what those are now.
But as an example, most recent quarter, our town pension fund was up 3.6% for the quarter, 16.6% year to date. I mean, those are phenomenal returns.
16.6 year to date?
Yeah.
Wow.
Last but not least, the committee to study town-owned property met for the first time last night. It was a very productive session. We've agreed, we've appointed Ann Armino as our chairperson. I'm not a voting member, but I'm going to be the secretary and help push it along. We've put together a very aggressive time schedule. We're going to meet 3 more times between now and May 8th with the idea that we're trying to make a recommendation as soon as possible.
Great.
Our next meeting our next meeting is April 10th at 6 p.m. across the hall in 201 if anybody would like to join us. John Turk is going to come and give us a historical look at what interest has been presented at the corporate park, and we're going to put together a list of questions that we have for commercial real estate brokers. We're going to invite to come and chat with us about the potential of the properties and how they might be marketed.
well, I certainly appreciate that aggressive timeline. We'll hope you make it, but we'll understand. It's-
We did take a break for Region 15's break because some of us are not going to be here. So, but we are trying to move it right along.
Yep. Anything else? Jennifer? Jason.
You can go to Jennifer. I didn't have any meetings.
You had no meetings? Good.
Since our last meeting, so.
Right, okay, Senior Commission, you just heard from Tameth, ours was canceled. Planning Commission, I went for a little bit. I'm not gonna read you their minutes, I didn't go. I mean, I went for half the meeting, so, anyway. Kevin Bennett's concern on Roxbury Road is still alive. Public hearing was continued till the next April meeting. I think they're having a special meeting in April 24th, to discuss it a little bit further. And lastly, Strategic Planning Task Force, the community assessment is out, and we have had, today, as of noon, 804 complete unique surveys and 16 mailed and 2 paper versions.
Anything else?
Right. That's all, there was 3 options,
And,
that's what we have. And April 20th at noon is the deadline, so hopefully all of you have completed the survey. And, and I didn't get to tell you, we're gonna get the survey results at our next meeting of the Strategic Planning Task Force. There's gonna be a special meeting on the 26th of April, and we're hoping to do one a little earlier on the same day at Heritage Village too, so those people don't have to come out
So
at
let
night.
me know when that
Yeah, I think
is,
it's
and
gonna be
I'll-
5 o'clock on the 26th.
I'll be with you on that one.
Please.
Okay. As soon as you get the results, please get them to me so I can
course.
get a little bit. Anything else?
Oh, no, it's for me.
Selectman Rosen.
Parks and Rec met last week when we did not meet. The big piece of news, a lot of talk about pickleball. If you're interested in pickleball, Google it. Fastest growing sport in America, according to the Pickleball Association of America. But it's like a combination of tennis.
But they have no
played on
interest
it's
We don't have
played
to
on
run
a-
so far.
On a sort of shortened tennis court, for lack of it. And it's like a mix of ping pong and tennis court. It's very popular.
Justin seems
they're
to
gonna
have played
test-
that.
They have a pickleball court in Heritage Village, and they're looking at taking potentially either one of our existing courts or the flat land that we did not approve the spending of the pavilion on in Settlers to tape out a pickleball court. So they're going to try it, give it a go, see if there's interest for the future. The River Road Park Subcommittee has directly contacted First Light. to try to get more clarity on where they would stand on things. So we'll see where that goes. They hadn't gotten a response by the time when we met. And disc golf, whether holds up, disc golf should be up and running pretty soon. Pretty soon.
Today that the first frisbee already's been thrown.
Yeah.
Oh, man, where was I?
So,
You should have thrown the first one.
so and there
Like a
seems to
ribbon
be
cutting.
generally a lot of excitement. And Jeff, as you noted, Jake Addison, who is the Eagle Scout, he's been able to raise remaining funds. They provided some funds from their park fund, and so that work is supposed to begin. Now it was supposed to begin last weekend, and so we'll see. So that's Parks and Rec. EMS had a special meeting yesterday. It was to talk about volunteer appreciation day. Not a little eventful, more eventful than it should have been, but nothing that important. The big news out of Region 15 is they voted to move forward with the budget referendum, 2.41% increase, and it was originally came in a bit higher. There was a cut to a music teacher. That was an emotional issue, certainly, and a lot of, one thing we should be proud of, a lot of incredible kids used their voice, their First Amendment right, and spoke up to try to save a teacher. And it ended up not happening, but those kids should be really proud of themselves. We should be proud as a community that they spoke up.
Okay. Any other
Move we adjourn.
business? I gotta get any other business to come before the board. Seeing none. Any other motion, Jennifer?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
All right. So until May then.
Yeah.